Water. Most vital of all man's life, the way we know it could not exist. Man uses the waters of the earth to quench his thirst, to grow his food, and prepare it, to wash himself and his surroundings. Water. To make all the goods he uses every day: steel, oil, coal, cotton, wool, plastics, leather, glass, chemicals. And all of these activities change the water, alter it, remove some of its natural purity, add undesirable substances. Water is the great purifier of the earth. It has been the symbol of purification since ancient days, when men first observed its cleansing power. Watched it dilute the wastes of man and beast and make them harmless. And water can purify itself too, if there's enough time and space between the jobs men ask it to do. Too often in America today, there's not enough space between cities, factories, and homes. Not enough time between the use of water by one person and its reuse by the next. Result, a nationwide water pollution problem.
Why can't we get any decent drinking water in this town anymore?
They shouldn't be allowed to dump all that crud in our trout stream.
All we want is a place to swim near home.
How can you expect me to stay in business here if I can't even use this water in my plant?
The Special Subcommittee on Water Pollution will be in order. In the course of these hearings, the subcommittee will objectively examine and inquire into the whole breadth and scope of the water pollution problem facing the nation. It will also consider the specific items of legislation presently before us on this subject. A staff report dealing with the nationwide pollution problem reveals a rapidly increasing backlog of needs. While the Federal Water Pollution Control Act of 1956 and the 1961 amendments have provided the basis for a national program, much more is indicated as urgently necessary. We are glad to have you here this morning to testify.
Man has only one source of water, a closed circulation system from ocean to sky to earth to ocean. This has been the cycle of water since time began. These are our rivers and streams. We can orbit a man around the earth, but no miracle of modern science can squeeze one extra droplet of water over the amount allotted us by nature. The answer: we must stretch what we have. Stretch it to its limits through the control of pollution and the reuse of our water allotment. This is the challenge facing our Public Works Committee today, tomorrow, and for years to come. This is a film report of the Committee on Public Works of the United States Senate. It deals with major pollution, the problems it presents, our needs, and federal and state activity.
And what is pollution anyway? It is all the things civilized man has devised to add to the water, from his homes, factories, slaughterhouses. It may be solid, or liquid, or gaseous, or thermal. In short, pollution is anything that keeps our rivers from looking like this. And it turns up in the most unexpected places. You can find it in what most of us think is still frontier country, Alaska. Well, the glaciers still sparkle with purity, and the meadow of wildflowers remains unspoiled. Almost. This doesn't look the way an Alaskan stream should, because what it really is a sewer. The accumulation of waste is about 3 feet deep. Some of it's been there since the gold rush. Pollution of our waters is a tough problem because it's a vicious circle. Everybody needs water. And everybody pollutes it. Industry pollutes the drinking water of a town, and if you live there, you might feel like saying, hey, we have to drink that, you know. But if you owned the factory, you could claim that the town's sewage pollutes the water for industry. You'd have a point there, too. In our rural areas, and some towns too, pesticide sprays, poisons cause pollution. We need them for a good crop, but they're a hazard to other stream users when they leach out of the soil with the excess rainfall. All of these uses of water are legitimate and important, one no less so than the others. The trouble is that these uses spoil the water for other jobs just as important. Recreation, vital to physical and mental health. And nutrition, for our waters are a source of food. If we allow pollution to continue unchecked, what of the plants, fish, and shellfish that live in the water? If America's waters are troubled, it is because they are overworked. Among our American rivers, it would be hard to find one more overworked than the Ohio. Once, not even 200 years ago, this was the frontier. George Washington, traveling near here in 1770, remarked that the smallest of the Ohio catfish were bigger than any river fish near his home on the Potomac. There are no more 100-pound fish in the Ohio. Instead, the valley of this river today forms a great industrial empire, producing more wealth and supporting more millions of people than George Washington could ever have dreamed. All along the river's course from Pittsburgh to its rendezvous with the Mississippi at Cairo, Illinois, the waters of the Ohio are used and reused countless times. A man competes against himself for the precious water, on his job for industrial water, at home for drinking water, and in his spare hours for recreation water. This competition begins where the river begins, at Pittsburgh. The Allegheny coming from the north and the Monongahela from the south meet to form the mighty Ohio. And here, too, big industry begins. Of course, in Pittsburgh, big industry means big steel. And that means water to cool the white-hot metal. Then for the water, back to the river with a load of scale, the top layer of the metal shorn off by the contrast in temperature, and a form of pollution. But a river's for kids, too.
Hey, you kids, don't you know better than to swim in there? That water's polluted. Now come on out of there before you get sick.
Yes, the water's polluted. But Pittsburgh's success with steel has made it able to afford to do some cleaning up at a new treatment plant to take care of all domestic sewage from the city and 71 suburban towns, plus some of the industrial waste. Tunneled underground to this point, the human wastes, putrescent material from food processing plants, the grease and grit of a large American city are removed from the waters. More than 1 billion gallons of tainted refuse flow through this plant every week. In the processing, the water also receives doses of bacteria-killing chlorine, an added safeguard many communities can't afford. Treated sewage returns to the river. Most, but not all, of the disease potential has been removed. Just before it rejoins the Ohio, a laboratory makes one last check for bacteria and oxygen. There's an odor patrol, too, but you never know it. Pittsburgh has what is called a combined sewer system, much like this one in Milwaukee. Wastewater and storm runoff flow through the same channel. In a heavy storm, some, perhaps most of the flow will have to bypass the treatment plant and empty directly into the river. That's what's happened here. Sewers tell a lot about people. Wastes poisonous enough to kill fish. The autopsy of a doll. This river, through the business heart of Milwaukee, empties into Lake Michigan, and it empties its sewage there, too. Along these beautiful beaches of the lake, a rainstorm brings out these signs. Of course, that doesn't keep people from swimming. Vast ocean-like Lake Michigan polluted? Nonsense. Just like those kids back in Pittsburgh, where the Ohio, one job complete, is moving on to West Virginia to help manufacture many comforts of man. Chemicals, machinery, concrete, glass, plastics, aluminum. And they all use lots of water. It takes about 10 gallons of water, for example, to refine 1 gallon of gasoline. Always borrowing the waters of the river, then returning the borrowed waters with man-made adulterants added. Mineral particles, mill scale, phenol, acids, oil slick, scum, slag. What effect do all these have on humans who drink them? We don't know. Some of this water, heated while in use, returns to the river still hot. This too is a form of pollution, thermal. Not exactly poisonous, but destructive to fish, plankton, and aquatic plants in the river, a boon only to undesirable green algae.
Hi.
Hi.
Catching anything?
No, this water's running a temperature from that new mill upstream. It's cooked every fish for miles. So I just keep kidding myself. But I like a chance to sit and think.
Well, good luck.
Thanks.
Well, all of us like to sit watching a river and think sometimes. But sometimes all there is to look at is suds. Detergent suds. Chemically produced by ingenious man, they refuse to dissolve and they provide passenger service downstream for all sorts of bacteria. Hundreds of miles away, both will still be there in the water other Americans must drink. Here's another kind of suds. Pulping liquors from a paper plant along the Androscoggin River in New Hampshire. Ingredients, caustic sodas and bleaches, strong enough to turn solid wood into paper. Above this plant, the river's a clear stream. But from here down to the coast of Maine, the water's the brown of paper and textile mill waste. The Indians called this river of many fishes. They wouldn't call it that now, and they wouldn't eat the few fish they could catch. 50 miles downstream at Rumford, Maine, some of these suds still float on the surface. Water is the servant of man, and the wages of water are some effort toward repairing the damage wrought by man. The Ohio has a long way to go, and many people and places to serve. Coal mines, for example. Hanging Rock, Ohio. A mining company is repaying age-old debts to the river, cleaning house before moving on to a fresh location. This lake, once an open pit mine, has been backfilled, reforested, and allowed to fill up with fresh water. A big difference from the old days when abandoned coal mines looked like this, scarlet pools of sulfuric acid mine drainage. Acid that can corrode metal and concrete and the human stomach. But still possible to clean up, much easier to clean up, in fact, than these, deadliest of wastes, from an atomic reactor. At Oak Ridge, radioactive wastes must be thoroughly screened from the waters to prevent contamination downstream. Extraordinary care is taken, tests made all along the way to make sure radioactivity levels of the water are well below safe limits before it's emptied into the river. Only slightly less dangerous, rocket and supersonic aircraft fuels being tested nearby at the U.S. Air Force's General Hap Arnold Wind Tunnel and Test Center. To cool the equipment and atmosphere after the fierce heat of simulated space and near-space flights, vast amounts of water. This retention pond was scooped out of barren soil especially to restore used water to its normal temperature and to dilute the accumulated toxins. The system works well. On the Ohio, the tug of war over the use of the water continues. People and industry, this time at Cincinnati, second great city and fourth major industrial center along the Ohio. Mill Creek, flowing through the center of the city. Not long ago, raw sewage also flowed through the heart of the city, in the waters of the creek. Today, underground sewers carry most, but not all, wastes to a treatment plant serving the metropolitan area. The results, incoming and outgoing liquid. This is the condition of the Ohio as it leaves Cincinnati. What about as it enters the city? To make the water acceptable for household drinking, cooking, and washing, water treatment plants have become a familiar part of urban scenery, not just along the Ohio, but in scores of American cities. The Ohio has now been through at least 2 major sewage treatment plants and hundreds of factories. If it's to keep up this pace, research to find better and hopefully cheaper ways to keep America's rivers clean must continue. Research at the new U.S. Public Health Sanitary Engineering Center is vital if our rivers are to serve a growing population and industrial plant. Cincinnati learned the hard way the importance of maintaining water quality along the river that is literally its life. In 1930 and 1931, severe outbreaks of intestinal disorders occurred in cities that used the river for drinking water. This floating laboratory, maintained by the city to keep constant check on the water, helps make sure it doesn't happen again. Seattle, too, is concerned with the quality of the water in its harbor. Careful chemical analysis reveals much that can't be seen with the naked eye, and this boat will still be in business when the city's new sewage treatment plant goes into action. Seattle is building this plant on its own. A federal grant is helping pay for the sewer system that will put a stop to this. For pollution hurts all of us.
The chemical analysis of this water shows you're going to have to find yourself another supply. Or you're going to have to spend a lot of money on a filtration plant. This water just won't do with the kind of machinery you're using.
That raises some real problems. I might be better off shutting down here entirely rather than risk raising my prices. What can we do about getting the city to take care of this?
Even the sea can create pollution when it's abused, as it is here outside San Francisco. Just south of the city, within sight of Candlestick Park and the Cow Palace, there was once an inlet of San Francisco Bay. Then a freeway turned the inlet into a lagoon. But the highway engineers had reckoned without the tides and without the sewers that emptied into the lagoon. Changing tides twice each day brought this. The only practical solution? Fill the lagoon with anything. Impounding the waters has aggravated the pollution problems of the Ohio, too. To enable the river to carry barges, to move the products of the river's industry, the Corps of Engineers began 50 years ago to build a series of locks and dams, transforming the river into a succession of long pools. It is a continuing project with new structures like this needed to replace outmoded smaller ones. Moving water, of course, can purify itself faster than still water. The Ohio today is mostly still, complicating the purity problems of those who must use it. For not everyone has a choice of water supply or location. Utah, for example, a scanty water supply to begin with, and much of what there is, salty. The Utah Power and Light Company must use the Jordan River on the outskirts of Salt Lake City. It's the only river around, and it's used as a sewer by residents and industries alike. Water that looks like this must be purified before the power company can use it. And since the composition of sewage is always variable, the purifying process must vary too, sometimes every half hour. Things are not quite that bad along the Ohio, but around Louisville, the saying is that the river is too thick to drink, too thin to plow. Louisville, home of the Kentucky Derby and of Kentucky bourbon. It takes good water to make good bourbon. The whiskey men can't depend on the Ohio. They use spring water. But the power company and the cement plant on the other side of the river and the farms downstream, they have to make do with the Ohio and add some more sediments of their own. Part of Louisville's water problem is a sewage problem. Beargrass Creek looks inviting up here in the bluegrass country. The trouble starts here as it begins its course through the center of Louisville. Just a large open sewer, uncovered, highly polluted. The concrete walls here keep people away, but a little farther on, as it meanders through Cherokee Park and past Daniel Boone, the creek looks innocent. Only a telltale odor gives it away. All the way through the downtown area of the city, collecting more refuse, garbage, and sewage every foot of the way. And those bubbles, not fish, methane gas, a byproduct of human and animal offal. Methane is a deadly poison. Back in the 1850s, when nobody had ever heard of water pollution, a whole string of slaughterhouses flourished along here, and so much blood flowed into the creek that the people of Louisville called it Old Crimson. Fortunately for the Ohio, these gates strain Old Crimson before it enters the river. But straining doesn't do the whole job. How far below Louisville must the Ohio travel before regaining a reasonable part of its vitality and usefulness? 25 miles. Pollution doesn't have to be rusty or crimson. It comes in all colors. It happens to be crimson of a sort in Kansas City near the meatpacking plants, along the Missouri and the Kaw. These in our time are rivers of blood. And as the blood gets a little older, staler, pollution comes in brown. In Georgia, at a textile mill, it's black. At a New England chicken plant, white mixed with black and yellow. Even at Utah Lake, in blue. And in some places where we expect beauty, such as our nation's capital, in just plain ugly. There are some people, though, who don't see why we Americans should have to put up with this. People who don't see why we should fight with each other over who has the right to pollute the water. Not these people. In Omaha, they probably don't realize that's a sewer they're fishing in. And the kids, they're the same everywhere. None of them know it, but their city is doing something to make the Missouri an even better place to swim. It's building a sewage treatment plant, and so is its neighbor across the river, Council Bluffs. Thanks to these two cities, their river will proceed to its next user, ready for the next job. And a trip on the River Belle will always be a treat. Boys won't have to risk their health as this fellow on the Ohio does by having to swim in the company of sewer pipes. There is a river, the psalmist sang ages ago, the waters of which shall make glad the city. He might have been thinking of Babylon, once famous for the splendor of its culture and its hanging gardens. Now a barren, semi-desert, inhabited only by nomadic shepherds. To live, man must use and pollute the water. But if he abuses it, fails to do his best to restore its natural purity, then the water will no longer be able to serve him. and factories will close, farms dry up, people disappear. The lesson of Babylon will not have been learned. The population and industry of America are growing every day. The water supply remains the same. Will the future hold this or this? Only we can decide.
You've now seen something of the dimensions of the water pollution problem which confronts the country. Now, what do we propose to do about it? Well, in the words of the legislation which we are considering, it is our purpose to establish a positive national water pollution control policy of keeping waters as clean as possible. And to do this, we need first to establish and enforce adequate water quality standards. Second, we need to step up research in order to find better answers. And third, we need an increased effort on all three levels of government. If we do this, then we can hope to meet our water needs.